Hi, my name is Kelly Yeaman, and this is my project on acceptable use policies. An acceptable use policy, or an AUP, is any document that outlines the guidelines and rules on what use of technology is both acceptable and unacceptable under a certain business or organization. Today, schools incorporate more and more technology into our everyday learning. In order to keep our students safe and hold them accountable, every school should have an AUP. Bosco adds that their AUPs are in place at schools to both protect students and provide students with good access to digital media and to support engaged learning. When I looked at the guidelines that Westbrook, the school I teach at, gives to parents and staff and students, I found that they rely on a lot of county or MCPS documents. I found MCPS regulations, a student AUP, and several other documents. Westbrook also has staff create its own Chromebook agreement that is given to both students and parents to sign. When I was searching for these county documents, I had a little trouble locating the AUP. I first went to the county website where I directly searched for the acceptable use policy, and I found several different documents. The first document that was suggested was the terms of use, which kind of explained the different use of technology, followed by a regulations document. After I was pointed and directed to several links about different laws, I then went to Google to search for the MCPS AUP. With my Google search, I found an acceptable use policy, but it was aimed towards secondary students in grades 6 through 12. I then went to a next document, which finally looked like an acceptable use policy for elementary students. I went back to Montgomery County to look at the regulation document that I found. This 9-page document seemed to be the most thorough AUP that Montgomery County has published. It had a purpose. It had a brief background on the importance of the appropriate behavior for technology. Then it had a bunch of definitions for technology-based vocabulary. It then listed 6 different procedures to ensure cyber safety, cyber security, and cyber ethics. It wasn't until this last section of the procedures, conduct and use, with specific guidelines for students to follow. These 11 different guidelines were bulleted and straightforward guidelines for students and staff. After the 11 different guidelines, there was a non-compliance section about what would happen if you violated this regulations document. I then went to the student AUP that seemed to be directed at elementary students. It had a liability section, an internet privacy statement, and then went on to the AUP. Under the AUP section, there was a general section followed by a student section that had 17 bulleted rules that students will follow. Underneath these 17 bullets was a student signature and a parent signature in agreement with this document. The 17 rules and guidelines that were given to students were very straightforward and direct. The first bullet was that students will only use technology for educational purposes and accepting all the damages for inappropriate behavior and violations of this document. The next 16 were all about not cyberbullying, keeping students safe, and respecting the laws, and not going around any security measures in place, and not messing with any network settings, and focusing on being responsible and realizing the damage that can come with violating this policy. The last bullet point said that students will report any violations of the AUP to a teacher or principal. The last document I looked at was the Westbrook Chromebook contract. This is written by teachers and staff at Westbrook School and given to students and parents to sign before students are even allowed to use Chromebooks at school. This document begins with general information. This section states that Chromebooks are used for testing, Google applications for education, expected to be taken care of by the assigned student, and again, used for only educational purposes. In the Expectation Center, it repeats that technology is only used for educational purposes, that Chromebooks need to be taken care of by the assigned student. All accounts are closely monitored, that students should not share passwords, not email anybody outside of MCPS, and not add any applications, or applications that teachers allow students to download must be MCPS approved applications. It then goes into a consequences section that lists the price for Chromebook repairments as well as disciplinary actions for violations. I want to go, and then after this violation, both the student and parent sign. But this computer violation and consequences had a very interesting paragraph that I've copied and pasted here. It says that the student use of technology is governed by the regulation agreement that I had gone through a little bit earlier, another MCPS regulation document about student rights and responsibilities, and an MCPS student code of conduct. It says compliance, not complying with the expectations as stated in the referred regulations will result in disciplinary actions. So, as we are communicating these guidelines to students, parents, and staff, my first suggestion is to put all of those different guidelines into one place. If they have 3 different documents on top of the Westbrook Chromebook contract that they're supposed to be referring to, I think all of these places need to be easily accessible and not scattered all over the internet like I found. Specifically for staff, I think the information should be in one place in the school. Whether it's a binder, whether it's on the staff website, there should be one place with all of these different documents. I think it's also important for staff that the information is directly communicated. There could be a staff meeting where the administration refers to all of these and goes over each document, or even a staff meeting where the staff sits down, reads and annotates these different documents to know their role to keep themselves and their students safe. Specifically for students, the teacher should review the policy in the classroom to break down vocabulary and take all student questions. For younger students like mine, I think it's important to collaboratively create anchor charts, pictures, or visuals to reference and remind students of the rules and guidelines. So these anchor charts can hang up in your classroom all year so students aren't just signing the AUP and forgetting about it. There are constant reminders around the classroom, and you're constantly reminding them so that this AUP is really implemented in your classroom. For parents, I would suggest sending a letter home with anything required to be signed. If you attach a small letter saying why this document is important, it's more likely for parents to read this document than they would without a letter. If without a letter and you're just sending something that needs to be signed, they may skip whatever it is and just sign the bottom. I think it's important to review these AUPs during back to school night or parent-teacher conference, sometime when you can see these parents and really talk about how important they are. And lastly, be available for questions for parents. To implement these AUPs and digital citizenship for both students and teachers, I think it's important to, with your students, establish clear rules. Again, not signing the AUP and forgetting about it, but having those visuals around your classroom and referring to them all the time will help implement this AUP. You need to model digital citizenship for your students. Be transparent about the choices you are making online and why. For younger kids, it's important to define and explicitly teach digital citizenship. There are many websites and activities, and this picture above from BrainPop shows a quick video that you can show students to really explain what digital citizenship is. You can organize your resources using tools like Symbaloo to organize bookmarks and links and help guide students to targeted sites so it's all organized and they don't have to surf the web on their own and more likely to violate this AUP. It's important to supervise and hold your students accountable Whether you're monitoring student activity or making sure they're on task, it's important to know what they're doing online. Lastly, use IST standards and curriculum technology standards to implement and use best practices when you're with your students. For other teachers and staff in your building, you should continue to model digital citizenship. Model how to best interact and implement technology in your classroom, as well as explaining how students should be interacting online. It's important to model and share lessons and best practices with teachers when lessons go well and students are really engaging and learning online. It's important to share and model IST standards, such as this standard for coaches that says you should model and promote strategies for achieving equitable access to digital tools and resources and technology-related best practices for all students and teachers. Lastly, give reminders about AUP aspects and advice for students or teachers' best interest in the classroom. It never hurts to be reminded or to be pointed to new resources for teachers to implement these AUPs and keep students safe. Thank you.